Now see the second part of this chapter. He saw, page number 20, he saw a most wonderful sight. Through a little hole in the wall, the children had crept in, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. In every tree that he could see, there was a little child, and the trees were so glad to have the children back again that they had covered themselves with blossoms and were waving their arms gently above the children's head. The birds were flying about and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up through the green grass and laughing. It was a lovely scene. When the giant looked out from his window, then he saw a very marvelous sight. He saw that through a little hole in the wall, the children had entered, and they were sitting in the branches of the trees. And the trees were very happy to have the children back again. And due to happiness, the trees covered themselves with flowers, and they were waving their branches above the children's heads. The birds were flying and twittering with delight, and the flowers were looking up. The flowers had bloomed, and the grass were very happy. It was really a very lovely scene. Only in one corner it was still winter. It was still winter in one corner of the garden. It was the farthest corner of the garden, and in it was standing a little boy. He was so small that he could not reach up to the branches of the tree, and he was wandering all round, crying bitterly. In the one corner of the garden, there was a little child who was unable to climb the tree. That's why there was still winter in that corner, and the little boy was weeping bitterly. The poor tree was still covered with frost and snow, and the north wind was blowing and roaring above it. The tree where the child was standing, it was still covered with frost and snow, and north wind was blowing there. "Climb up, little boy," said the tree, and it bent its branches down as low as it could, but the boy was too thin. The tree bent its branches as it could, and it said to the child that just climb up, little boy. But the little child was so small that he could not climb the branches of the tree. And the giant's heart melted as he looked out. When the giant looked out, his heart moved with pity. "How selfish I have been," he said. "Now I know why the spring would not come here." He realized that he was very selfish. He realized that he had become very selfish, and he knew the reason why the spring had not come in his garden. He talked to himself that he will put the poor little child on the top of the tree, and he will break the wall all around the garden, and he determined that his garden would be the children's playground for ever and ever, and he was really sorry for what he had done. So he crept downstairs and opened the front door quite softly and went out in the garden. But when the children saw him, they were so frightened that they all ran away, and the garden became winter again. Only the little boy did not run, for his eyes were so full of tears that he could not see the giant coming. The giant came downstairs and opened the door of the garden very silently and went into the garden. But when the children saw the giant coming, they became frightened, and they left the garden and ran away. Only the little boy who was standing in the corner could not run away because his eyes were full of tears. That's why he could not see the giant coming. And the giant stole up behind him and took him gently in his hand and put him up into the tree. The giant came quietly without being noticed, and he took him gently. He took the little child gently in his hand and he put him into the branches of the tree. And the tree broke at once into blossoms, and the birds came and sang on it. And the little boy stretched out his two arms and flung them round the giant's neck and kissed him. When the giant put the little child into the branches of the tree again bloomed, and the little boy became very happy, and he kissed the giant. And other children, when they saw that the giant was not wicked any longer, came running. When the other children saw that the giant had become merciful, pitiful, he had not evil now, so they came running there. And as they came in the garden, the spring again came in the garden. The giant said, "It is your garden now, little children." And he took a great axe and knocked down the wall. The giant told the children that this garden will be for their playground forever, and after that he broke the wall, the fence all around the garden. And when the people were going to market at 12 o'clock, they found the giant playing with the children in the most beautiful garden they had ever seen. And when the people went to market through that way, they found the giant playing with the children, and the garden was very lovely garden they had ever seen. All day long they played, and in the evening they came to the giant to bid him goodbye. "But where is your little companion?" he said. The boy put into the tree. The giant loved him the best because he had kissed him. "We don't know," answered the children. "He has gone away." "You must tell him to be sure and come tomorrow," said the giant. But the children said that they did not know where he lived and had never seen him before, and the giant felt very sad. All the children were very happy, but the giant, he used to ask about the little child whom he had put in the branches of the tree. But all the children answered that they did not know about that little child, where he lived, and what did he do. Hearing this, the giant felt very sad. Every afternoon, when the school was over, the children came and played with the giant, but the little boy whom the giant loved was never seen again. The giant was very kind to all the children, yet he longed for his little friend and often spoke of him. "How I would like to him," he used to say. When the children returned from the school, they played with the giant, and the giant loved all the children, but he always missed that little child, and he used to talk about that little child. Years went by, and the giant grew very old and feeble. Time went by, passed by, and the giant became very old and weak. He could not play about more, so he sat in his armchair and watched the children at their games and admired his garden. When the giant became very old and weak, he was unable to play with the children, so he sat in his armchair and he saw the children playing, and he used to admire, used to praise, appreciate his garden. "I have many beautiful flowers," he said, "but the children are the most beautiful flowers of all." He used to say that he has many beautiful flowers. In his garden there were many beautiful flowers, but the children were the most beautiful flowers of all. One winter morning, he looked out of his window as he was dressing. He did not hate the winter now, for he knew that it was merely the spring asleep and that flowers were resting. One winter morning, when he was dressing up, he knew that he did not hate the winter, because he knew that the spring has gone to sleep and the flowers are flowers were resting. Suddenly he rubbed his eyes in wonder and looked and looked. When he rubbed his eyes, he saw a very marvelous, very wonderful sight. In the farthest corner of the garden was a tree quite covered with lovely white blossoms. He saw that in the corner there was a tree that was covered with lovely white buds, flowers. Its branches were golden. The tree's branches were golden and silver fruits were hanging down from the tree, and underneath there was the little boy whom he had put in the branches, whom he had loved too much. Downstairs ran the giant in great joy and down into the garden. The giant ran and came into the garden with joy and happiness. He hastened across the grass. He hurried towards the grass and came near to the little boy. And when he came quite close, his face grew red with anger. And when the giant came near the little boy, his face grew red because of anger. And he said, "Who hath dared to wound thee?" He became very angry. His face became red due to anger. And he said that, "Who had dared to hurt you?" For on the palms of the child's hands were the prints of 2 nails, and the prints of 2 nails were on the little feet, because on the feet and on the palms of the little child there were 2 marks of nail spikes on his palms and nails. Palms and feet, sorry. There were 2 marks of nails spikes on the arms and the feet of the little child. That's why the giant grew angry and his face became red, and he questioned that, "Who dared to hurt you? Who hath dared to wound thee?" cried the giant. "Tell me that I may take my big sword and slay him." The giant again asked that, "Who dared to wound you, to hurt you? Tell me, the little boy, because I will take my big sword and I will kill him." "Nay," answered the child, "but these are the wounds of love." The little child replied, "No, these are the wounds of love." "Who art thou?" said the giant. The giant became surprised and he asked, "Who are you?" who he was. And a strange awe fell on him, and he knelt before the little child. And there was a strange fear that covered the giant, and the giant went down on his knee in front of the little child. And the child smiled on the giant and said to him, when the child saw the condition of the giant, he smiled and said, "You let me play once in your garden. Today you shall come with me to my garden, which is paradise." The little child said that once you had allowed me to play in your garden. Today you will have to come with me to my garden, and the name of my garden is paradise, heaven. And when the children ran in that afternoon, after that, when the children came in the garden of the giant to play there, they found the giant lying dead under the tree, all covered with white blossoms. They found that the giant was lying dead under the tree, and his dead body was covered with white flowers, and he was lying dead under the tree. Okay, children, second part is also completed. Listen the lecture very carefully, revise this chapter and write the word meaning of part first and part second of this chapter. That's all for today. Thank you and have a nice day ahead.